Virtual coins, real risks. The only guarantee in crypto is the risk. Beware. Everything discussed in this podcast is solely for entertainment purposes and should not be considered financial, investment, or any other form of professional advice. Bitcoin is a permissionless, secure, decentralized piece of code. The only guarantee with Euro savings is a loss of purchasing power. Listening to a podcast consumes electricity.
Hi there, dear Bitcoiners. This is episode 136. Welcome to the Always Value Bitcoin podcast, the independent, ad-free voice of Belgian Bitcoiners. You can find all links to our earlier episodes, which most of them are in Dutch, on our ad-free homepage, allesvoorbitcoin.be or alwaysvaluebitcoin.com. Today we're only going to talk about the CBDCs, the digital euro, so people outside of Belgium also understand what's going on around here. In essence, they are stealing all our money in the biggest bank heist ever. I'll explain why. But first things first, in the previous episode I've talked about the hardware wallets, and we also talked about a lot of things that are going on in this Bitcoin cycle, and I told that this cycle was a bit different, especially when you're into altcoins, so to speak. So be careful, because it seems that the price is pumping and people will go nuts here and there in the markets. So don't be fooled. If you are a Bitcoiner or you're half a Bitcoiner but not entirely, just be careful. This cycle will be rather different, and the big boys in this market will cash out to Bitcoin anyway. But also in that episode, I talked about the 21 or the 21 local meetups. I had some harsh criticism on that. I don't take much back of that, but I do want to clarify something. I was on a recent Node Runners meetup, and these people are always very kind, but also they speak their mind, which is great. And I talked to a few of them, and some of them were rather disappointed in me telling that this local meetup structure is not always what it seems. And of course, if you have criticism on such a system as 21, you get some backlash, and that's understandable. Certainly if I, let's say, paint with broad strokes to make a point. To finish that story, I want to clarify one thing. It's not that every meetup with the 21 label is rotten. And of course, I am not at every meetup. So it's understandable that people who organize some of these exact meetups, especially in the Netherlands, were like dumbfounded, like, what are you telling me, guy? Because I've never seen this behavior in my meetups. So come and see for yourself. And in that ethos, I can only say, yes, that's true. In those particular meetups, it will be okay, I'm sure. And it's not that every meetup is bad or every 21 meetup is bad. What I do say is that there is a problem with not having a vetting system enough. And, in many places, and that's what I hear, but also see for myself, there is such a problem. But okay, go listen to that episode, but I wanted to add a small disclaimer there. I was a bit angry about the core issue of what I wanted to say. I don't want that brand of Der Gigi going bust or being watered down because of what I call parasites, what I call bad actors. And that's the main thing that I wanted to point out. Of course, that's not the case in every single meetup. That would be very bad. If no one speaks out about that, it will be watered down because everybody keeps their mouth shut, and the people who shout the loudest get the upper hand in the end. And we all know that some of these people can be bad actors, but not all of them are. So I take one word back, and that is that it is prevalent or dominant, or whatever the interpretation was in the Netherlands. I do want to stress that it's happening almost everywhere, except for Germany, as far as I know. But it's just a system. And if you want to set up a local meetup, be my guest. It's awesome, certainly for new people. That's not the issue. The issue is people putting a crown on their head and telling others that, hey, I am 21 or I speak for the people here. And, well, most of the time they also mix that with bad information or shitcoinery and the other stuff that I talked about. So in short terms, I want to take back that... well, it's usual. When you give criticism, the people who do nothing wrong and are really, really keen on doing things right take it upon themselves and see it as an attack. And the people who actually were the target of this are totally absent and don't even realize. So that's a bit sad and funny at the same time, because the wrong people think that it's about them. And I want to apologize for that, and I also did that to their face, because, yeah, that's just not right. If you're someone who, let's say, did 10 meetups locally somewhere in the Netherlands, only purely about Bitcoin and building stuff, then it's just not fair for me to say, yeah, the label 21, where you did those meetings under, is no good. That's not okay. So I take that back, but I do want to stress that, well, keep your eyes open, because not everyone showing up at these meetings or organizing them is, let's say, a good actor. That being said, about bad actors, speaking about bad actors, let's talk about the EU, our favorite subject, of course. I've seen more and more nudging. You mean like systematic articles in the newspaper or on television, radio, to stress that cash is bad. And we have all kinds of, examples of that, made up or not made up by journalists. And I'm going to first read a few of these headlines so people understand what exactly is appearing in our newspapers. I'm talking about Belgium here specifically. I don't know what the situation is in the Netherlands, but I guess that it will not be too much different. But okay. So, for example, the original title is in Dutch, of course, but I translated it. Coins are heavy, cumbersome, and they got lost so easy. No wonder Belgians hoard them. A second title was Withdrawing cash while traveling is more expensive than you think. Another title was 1 in 3 Belgians still pays in cash weekly. 3 out of 4 respondents want cash to remain a payment method, and recent legislation mandates merchants to accept cash payments, although there are limits to prevent money laundering. And then an article about Israel banning cash, and a whole slew of articles about old people that try to pay in cash but their money is lost, or people trying to get cash from the bank and are not permitted to get their own money from the bank because they are deemed very, very criminal or very, very big wrongdoers because they did one crypto-related transaction and so on. So you get the idea. Cash is branded as being bad and systematically is associated with either the loss of value or the loss of your cash itself, or the, let's say, more shady side of the economy. So if you pay in cash, well, there must be something wrong with you. So that's the gist of what they want to nudge the people to. Of course, we know that fiat money in general, not only cash, but the euro in this case, loses purchasing power hand over fist. And that's not a drawback for them. They say, yeah, but that's just part of the economy. If there is no inflation, the economy cannot grow, people cannot produce stuff, and, well, it's just necessary. And to an extent, that might be true economically if it's, let's say, low inflation, like 1.2% or something. But once it crosses that line, 2 or more percentages, there are studies enough to say like, okay, this is not good. Also, the target of the EU and the European Central Bank itself is to aim at 2%, and that's for a reason, of course. But okay, let's first see what's going on with this CBDC, because about 2 to 3 years ago we were quite on track to get a system where they would introduce a digital euro. And this digital euro is a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, and of course it's centralized and it's also mandated by the European Union in this case. We went through a whole series of laws and legislation to make this happen, and the whole project will be finalized in test phase somewhere beginning of 2025. They had to wait for two things. According to Mr. Panetta, the head or former head of the CBDC group within the European Commission, they said like, okay, the euro first needs to be stable enough to introduce this. If we have an inflation of, let's say, 5 to 10% on the current euro, we cannot introduce the CBDC because it will add more volatility and more risk. So they had to wait until they got that under control. If they got it under control or not, that's a whole other discussion. Let's say that they aim at 2% and are almost there, if you believe their official figures. I don't believe them myself, but you believe what you want, of course. On the other hand, they waited also for the other laws like MiCA ruling and the EIDAS laws to be ready. And they will also be ready at the beginning of 2025. For example, there's the travel rule, which says like, okay, if you want to make an electronic payment to a merchant, or a merchant's accepted, then they have to know their customer, KYC. So they have to know your name and so on in order to accept that payment. There was a threshold proposed in the first series of laws that were proposed in the European Commission, and that was a barrier of about 1,000 euros. And then some French and I think a communist from Spain proposed to put that on 0 to prevent some Smurf attacks. Let's say where you divide a lot of cash or a lot of funds over different payments, and all in very small amounts, under 1,000 euros. In that way, you could possibly do something wrong. So they said, we are gonna cut it to 0, and then you have to even KYC your customer if you sell something of 10 euro cents, which is completely ridiculous, of course. For example, a small startup selling specifically cheap goods or cheap software. Let's say you sell your software at 99 cents a month. You have a problem with that because you have to KYC everyone and the problem is also for, let's say, street vendors or whatever you can imagine that sells cheaper goods. You won't go through the cumbersome administrative stuff to accept that, and also the customer side will not like it if you buy something for about half a euro. It's not pleasant to do KYC for that. That's of course by design. They want to push you towards their own system where you don't need that extra KYC because it's already linked to your ID, and that is of course the digital euro. You get an app, possibly built by Amazon, and that app is linked to your ID. Now, they say that it is not linked to your ID, but come on, we are not that naive. If you put it on your phone, it can and will be linked to your person. If not directly, it will be linked to your person through metadata. That's the data surrounding your real payment data. But okay, say for that, we are going to return to the basics here. Like, why is this the biggest theft in, let's say, European history, or let's say at least until 1946? Shortly after the war, there were some laws put in place to replace the Belgian franc, which was our national currency back then, and to replace it, and everybody was forced to exchange even their stocks and even their bonds and even other stuff they had on their bank accounts. And you got also, you had to deliver the cash you had, because the cash would not be valid anymore, and it would be exchanged for the new Belgian franc, which looked different and was printed in the UK. And so that happened in 46. That had all kinds of reasons, some rather good reasons, others were like, well, invented, but in the end it wrecked a lot of people, especially small shop owners or people who thrived during the World War for whatever reason. So it wrecked a lot of people. You can say like, oh, that's good because these people were all thieves and criminals anyway. It doesn't matter what you think about that. It's just a mathematical and financial instrument that they let loose on the people, and it hit parts of their economy. And an economy, in my vision, is not black or white, but it's all kinds of shades of gray, actually. So you have, let's say, everything in between black and white is also possible. It's difficult to judge that afterwards, so many decades later, but this time there's an even bigger theft going on. That's the CBDC. So let's go back to the definition of money before we continue. There are, of course, various forms of money throughout history, but also banknotes and coins and so on. But if the definition of money can be said like it's a medium of exchange, of course, a unit of account and a store of value. Now, the CBDC is in essence not money, and it's no money anymore. If you have euros right now on hand in cash and it gets exchanged for the same amount in digital euro, then actually they robbed you. Now, you can make the argument like, okay, if I have 150 euros now in my wallet, in banknotes, and I exchange that for the digital version, also 150 euros, but on an app, I can buy as much as I had before with the same 150 euros. So yes, that's true. But are you sure about that? In theory, you are right. But what if they don't like you? Or what if they say like, yes, the origin of your 150 euros is not something we like. Let's say you painted someone's wall in their garden and you got 150 euros for doing that work. It's up to you to properly fill in taxes for that and be administrative okay with the state. That's up to the individual to do so. If you choose not to do so, you still have 150 euros in your pocket and you can still, well, use it in the real economy. This real economy is all shades of all kinds of colors. You might not like it that someone chooses not to pay taxes on that, but it's their choice. And that's not nice because society expects you to pay taxes. Taxes are theft as well, but okay, we are past that discussion since a very long time. So you have that 150 euros, and now they say, oh, but everything will be so clean and so up and up if you do it on a CBDC. Well, maybe that person wouldn't even ask you to paint their wall and say like, well, I can do with the current color as well because I don't need an expensive official painter to do this. So I will skip giving out that money in the real economy and I will just, well, save it or do nothing with it at all because it's not worth it. You have all kinds of possibilities, of course. What also can be said is like, okay, I still pay you the 150 in a digital wallet. Automatically, the cash is deducted after a while, or at least known, and everybody does it up and up. That's a nice example of what they want to see. If everyone has only official, let's say, transactions, tracked by the state, then everybody will be so holy and so good and so nice and paying taxes. On the other hand, it is not a store of value anymore, because you earn that 150 euros on a digital wallet, and you did it all up and up like it should, but it turns out that the people who paid you and whose wall you've painted, they are not nice people at all. So you did the work, you got the 150 digital euros, you are a really nice guy and you pay taxes on that correctly as it should, but it turns out these people were fraudsters. They worked for a local union, for example, and they did something really, really bad with the users' funds. And only after 5 years, they got caught, and that 5 years was just like a week after you painted their wall. So the funds that you got are ill-gotten. So you did the work, and then they say like, well, we will freeze those funds because you are a bad person as well. You worked for a criminal, and that's not nice. And even if you paid taxes on it, we will freeze the funds. Just an example of digital euro not being money anymore. If you do exactly the same in cash and that fraudster get caught, there is no way that you will have to turn in that cash or remotely make it not money anymore and declare it not usable anymore. So it's confiscatable also. So in the digital form, it's confiscatable. They cannot take it out of your wallet, of course, unless when they arrest you physically and take it out of your wallet. But okay. But in a digital form, it's very easy. They type in your name in a computer and they say to your bank or to the wallet provider, like, we want those 150 euros declared not valid anymore. So it's not a good foundation of economic activity anymore. If you introduce a CBDC, a digital euro, in Europe, then you might as well say that you don't want 15 to 20% of your economy anymore. Because a lot of our economy is not on the up and up. Do you think that people in Belgium, Italy, Portugal, Greece are all doing like tasks for, let's say, a small payment, all on the up and up and all pay taxes on that? I don't think so, to be honest. I see a lot of people not caring about that at all. And then we are not even talking about downright criminal stuff. We're just talking about ordinary people doing small tasks and being paid, let's say, under the counter. Of course, if you want your whole economy to be as clean as then you have to introduce a CBDC, but then you will end up with a wrecked economy. Because your economy is not based anymore on a fiat system, but on a fiat system that has no link to a valid medium of exchange or a trustable unit of account or a trustable store of value. Because you cannot trust it anymore. It's like a little coin with a small wire on it, and someone throws it into a vending machine to buy a can of drinks, and then they pull it out quickly again to have a free drink. It's that, but on the state level. The one pulling the wire is not a kid trying to scam a drink vending machine, but the state itself who tries to scam you. Because you work for that money, you do effort for that money, you take risk for that money. And in the end, they can just take it. They can just take it like that because they don't like you, for whatever reason. Also, this is a very, very powerful weapon. You don't know which regimes or which political figures will come to power in Europe. Can be any side. Can be fascists, can be nationalists, can be communists, can be whatever. And if you put this kind of weapon in the hands of wrong people, or totalitarian people, let's say, it's literally a deadly weapon, because you can say that union or this political party or this organization is not valid anymore. So all the members we can identify, we will wreck their wallet and we will just confiscate and freeze their funds. The other side of this story is, of course, always like, oh, it will not go this far. It will not be that bad at all. It's only like 3,000 euros maximum that you can put in that wallet anyway. No one will be totally wrecked by that. That's a criticism that I hear here and there, and it's not valid at all, because it's a slippery slope. If you trust the European Central Bank right now with the introduction of the CBDC digital euro, if you start to accept it, it will only go downhill from there. Because not only do you accept an uneasy and untrustworthy foundation of your economy, you also accept that they control your consumer tokens. Because it's not money anymore. It's a voucher, it's a consumer token. It's the same thing as Mickey Mouse money in Disneyland. You can do all kinds of stuff within Disneyland with Mickey Mouse money, and that's cool. But in the end, as soon as you step outside of that zone, it's maybe a collector's item, but other than that, it's not real money. You cannot pay with a banknote with a Mickey Mouse on it in your local bakery or in Starbucks or whatever you want to buy. That's the same for the whole of Europe. We all will have consumer tokens. And not only that, we will have consumer tokens that are programmable. And they said, through their marketing people on different radio stations, they said like, oh, but we will not program it. And even within the same interview, they said like, oh, yeah, but it's a maximum of 3,000 euros that you can use in your wallet. They are already programming it. They are already setting up limits. They are already pushing the boundaries. And if they set limits, they will also set expiry dates. You get a part of your payment for your work in a CBDC, for example. Now, other people say like, yeah, but right now you get vouchers to go out and eat during lunch anyway. So what's the difference? Well, there's a big difference, actually. The vouchers you get for, let's say, going to lunch in Europe, it's a rather prevalent system. You pay for that yourself because there's an old law, certainly in Belgium, that prevents you to be paid in anything else than the national currency, in this case, euro. It's in the law. You cannot pay people in cheese or beer or whatever. You cannot. It's not possible. It's prevented by law. You can do that only if they pay for that themselves. So for these lunch vouchers, you pay. You actually give a small amount of your salary in exchange for those vouchers. You, in theory at least, can refuse those as well. With the CBDC, a digital euro, there is no possibility anymore to refuse it in the end. At the beginning, they will make it voluntary, of course, and that's fine if I get the choice forever to actually use it or not. I'm rather okay with it. I would rather have it not existing at all, but okay. Then at least we as the public can say we don't want it. But on the other hand, if you work for the state yourself, you work for the government or the city or the provinces, or you get a social benefit somehow, at some point they will say, okay, we will pay half of it in a CBDC digital euro, or we will pay 100% in a digital euro, and now you have to download that app, link it to your identity, and get your benefits that way. Because there is of course, endless supply of euros. They can print how many billions they want, but with the CBDC, they can literally do whatever they like. They can put expiry dates on there, they can confiscate, they can print more, and they can also, let's say, give out more benefits, because it's not money anymore anyway. You don't have to literally look at it like real M1 or M2 money supply anymore. It becomes a tool, a weapon, and a social credit-linked consumer token. Also, I want to call out anyone who defends the CBDC, because in essence, you are part, or at least you are an accomplice, of the biggest train heist, the biggest bank robbery, and the biggest theft in European history since 1946. And I don't say that lightly. There are 450 million people in Europe. If even 10% of those people are deemed not okay for whatever reason, it might be political, socially, financially, whatever, even 10% of those people will be branded not okay and will sooner or later see their money be confiscated with the press of a button, the push of a button. They will have scripts that identify people that are deemed not okay, and they will either confiscate their money or limit it. But what I'm afraid of is that they also can set price controls, carbon-linked stuff, you name it. They can program it. Imagine that your paper bills, your real cash money, can be programmed and disappear remotely. It's like that. You have to see it that way. You had a vault, for example, with something valuable in it. Let's say gold, or a painting from a famous artist, or Bitcoin, or cash, whatever you have. And they say like, okay, I will take your vault and the content, and here you have an app, and well, we will tokenize that and we will put it in the app, and then you have the same value. You have the same value as what was in that vault, but you don't have the cumbersome, heavy thing anymore to, well, move around. No, you can just open your app and use it that way. That's what they do. Beforehand, you had a vault with something valuable in it, and afterwards you have an app linked to your ID, and then they say, be a good citizen according to our rules, or else. And that's what's happening right now, under our very noses. Our streets are full of cameras. Our databases everywhere are tracking us every move. That's not science fiction, that's reality. It is more and more linked to our ID. That's also a reality. See the way that Europe is now shielding us from progress as well. Some innovations in AI or self-driving cars or other things are shielded from us, like we're in the Soviet Union almost, with the difference that the Soviet Union at least had the guts to try to copy good things from the West and make an own version of it. But we in Europe right now, we just ban it and we don't copy it, we don't try anything with it, we try to limit it, we try to actively degrowth our own economy. And the CBDC will be the final nail in the coffin of our European economy, because you replace our already rotten fiat, which is euro, with an even more rotten programmable version of it. So if you are in favor of that, and if you try to defend that, even if you're a politician, a journalist, I don't care, if you actively defend this theft, you are an accomplice to pure theft. I'm saying that again, you are a thief, you are an accomplice to theft, because you defend something that you might as well really might know that is bad. And if you don't know, you have to inform yourself, because you might be a henchman and you might be a bit dumb and not understand what you're actually defending, but you are defending the biggest train heist, the biggest bank robbery in history. And that is bad, of course. And you're standing there and you are defending something that's not a euro at all. They tell in their marketing that the CBDC digital euro will be akin to the cash you have. It's just a digital version of it. If you have 50 euro in your wallet in paper, the 50 euro on your app will be worth as much. It's not true. It is not true, because it can be confiscated and it can be programmed. It is not the same. It is absolutely not the same. One thing is cash, which you can use, even if you're the biggest criminal in town. If you have that 50 euro, you can pay and you can be part of the economy. Is that nice? I'm not judging that. economy is not always nice. It's the economy. It's an end result of a whole series of factors. If the police catches a bad guy, then he probably will have his cash confiscated and his valuables, probably, to pay for his victims or whatever. And that's just the law doing their work. But don't criminalize 450 million people because they all need their consumer tokens linked to their ID being confiscatable and being actually not money anymore. So this is not, maybe it's a unit of account, but an account of what? But it's certainly not a base of a good medium of exchange, because you exchange your work or a good for a coin that's digital and can be confiscated at will. And that's not a fair exchange. If I exchange, let's say, I make a chair and I exchange it for 500 euros. So you pay me 500 euros and you walk out with that handmade chair. That's not a good deal if it's not in cash. Absolutely not a good deal if it's not in, if it is in a CBDC digital euro, because I'm left without my chair, you have it now, and I have 500 euros in, some token, some consumer token. Tomorrow it will be worthless, and not only the inflation will hit me, also it can be gone tomorrow because the state doesn't like, let's say, wooden chairs that I made for whatever reason. It will happen. Such things will happen. If they don't like the exchange, they will confiscate or make your money invalid. That's not, per definition, a medium of exchange anymore. That's not a fair exchange, because the consensus is not there anymore. The people cannot have a good consensus over whatever money it is if it is centralized and can be confiscated at will. That's why Bitcoin, for example, is such a great money, because it cannot be confiscated at will. If you pay for that chair in Bitcoin, you walk out with my chair, thanks for buying it, it's now your chair, and I have hard money. I am sure that the government will not remotely just take it away from me tomorrow. I am quite sure of that. With the digital euro, I am absolutely not sure. And even in a year or 10 years, I am not sure that that 500 euro is still really mine, because it's not my keys and it's not coins anyway. It's not even that. It's just a consumer token. So it's not a good medium of exchange. It is a unit of account, of course. You can argue about that, and not a store of value, inflation, but also if your value is stored on a CBDC and you, let's say, accumulate it, then you are really dumb, because not only inflation will get you, but you have the risk of any government or any regime trying to get your money for whatever reason. Remember, communist states that took like 10% of the people's money that was in state bank savings accounts. So you saved your whole life, and then they say like, we're going to take 10 or 20% of that. It will happen in Europe because they are strapped for cash, strapped for money, and they don't know where to get the value anymore because they know their game is up. So please, people, inform yourself about what the CBDC exactly is. And don't inform you only with our mainstream media, because they are playing a whole other game. They want this. They really love the CBDC because they are told to do that. And they will be the victims of that sooner or later as well. But okay, that's their game to play. Inform yourself, read about it, think about it as well. You're free to look up what money exactly is, and you're free to look up what the CBDC exactly does. It's all open. That's the great part. In Europe, you have this rather open policy, and you can follow their working papers, and you can see exactly what they are doing and promising. And you can also see that they are open to third parties to analyze those transactions. They let that, let's say, that information wide open, or at least they leave open the possibility. It's not a good thing anymore. It's not a good idea at all. So what can you do? First of all, never vote for politicians that are defending this theft. Don't defend that theft yourself, because obviously then you're an accomplice. But also, if someone, a merchant or your employer or someone you know wants to pay you in a CBDC, just refuse. Say, that's not money for me. I'm sorry, I will not accept it. If you are forced to accept it, because if you have a shop, for example, and the state tells you, no, you have to accept it, otherwise we will fine you, then you have to defend yourself. You have to defend yourself maybe by opening lawsuits. And maybe it's high time that all privacy-minded people and Bitcoiners and freedom fighters and whoever wants to call themselves pro-individual freedom unites and puts a big fund of funds ready to defend ourselves against this giant theft. There must be a lot of privacy related people out there and organizations out there, but I hardly hear them, and I certainly don't see them pay for anything. The people who are members there, they have to pay through the nose for paying their membership and having a little card. Oh, I'm a member of a privacy group. Hey, that's great, that's cool, you care about privacy, but maybe it's time to put up some more money to put it in a fund. And I'm not going to do it myself because I don't want to hold those funds, but there are serious official organizations or political parties even that can play this role and do it in a very good capacity in an organized way. I'm just a podcaster, I'm not going to hold those funds. But it's necessary because the first, let's say, government clerk that will be paid in a CBDC and refuses will have a problem. And he will say like, I refuse this payment, but I do want to get paid for my work. And then you have a whole legal discussion like, okay, can you force someone to install an app and accept fake payment in a fake coin? It's an open question. I think there's a very good legal fight in there. And maybe we will set some precedents and wreck this stupid system, because a CBDC is just a control. Also, and that's the kicker, if they are really, really so serious about not programming this money, why don't they put it in the Constitution of Europe? Why don't they put in a law that says like, in no circumstances can we link it to an ID or program this money at all. And even if we do, we get fined ourselves, or the banks that do it, or the app makers that do it. Whoever does it will get fined. Put it in the Constitution that digital euro has to be an exact digital equivalent of the cash. And I think that's technically possible. I think you can technically do that. But why would you do that with fiat? You have Bitcoin already in place, the network is there. So why the hell would you do that? But it is possible. I guess it is possible to put a good version of a digital euro online, but not the version that's here right now. This proposal stinks, and it will wreck parts of our economy and will be the biggest theft since 1946. That was Always Value Bitcoin for today, episode 136. Bye bye.